Hey everybody, Andy here, and this is the second part of my VariCam tour. In this section I'm going to go over the basic interface for the camera in terms of controlling all the settings that you need to do to get recording. This is the 35 camera here. The HS camera has the same interface, it shares the same recording module. I'll talk about both in context here, even though this is the 35. So the interface for the camera is all done through this little side panel, as you see here. The side panel has all the basic stuff you want to know and kind of very similar to what you've seen before. Things like your frame rate, your shutter speed, your white balance, your ISO. They're all set there on the side of the camera just like you expect. You also have some buttons along the side here and a scroll wheel to get around. The home button for your friend gets you back to this screen. Below that we have the play button to play back clips, a good old time code button to set time code. The time code input's over here. You can set it to in or out, jam it in, pretty straightforward. Info button to see your firmware version, to check on updates, and also to make log files to send to Panasonic if there's an error. And then finally, there's the view button, which makes this little guy into an actual little screen showing the output of the camera. So it's pretty handy to have as well if you need it. All right, so that's that interface. Going back home again, we have that side display that we're all pretty used to. Shutter and white balance are pretty similar in that you can go into shutter and dial in a shutter level or add in your own. So it has several preset shutter values here. You can see them in degrees or in fractions of a second, right? I can also come down here and say add and add in my own shutter as desired, get exactly what I want. You also can, if you desire, go to synchro scan mode here, over here, and dial in a very specific shutter to get rid of frequencies and flickers and things like that. So a nice option to have, very common. So back to the home page, white balance. You can run a white balance, of course. Hit the button up here, get auto white. That's going to find look at a white card and give you a response, like we expect with a traditional Panasonic camera. But you can also dial in your own by hitting the add button again, dial in Kelvin temperature. If you select a number there, right? You can also dial in green magenta. So it's actually a really nice white balance. They've followed the lead and made a really good way of dialing white balance. Is very important to have in a camera today. So that's that. Back home again. ISO. This is a big one. It's interesting. It's not like you can adjust it beyond just up and down. But what's important about the 35 camera here is that the base ISO is 800. The camera we call the native ISO, and that's native because it has the best signal-to-noise ratio, least noise, most image, most dynamic range. But also on this camera they call it dual ISO because it has a second ISO level that's very, very clean as well, and that's 5,000. If you go from 800 up to 5,000, you notice you'll start to add gain and get noisier. You hit 5,000, it actually gets clean again. Uses a second circuit on the sensor itself. You get actually much cleaner, get you a better result. So at 5,000 it performs really well, and at 800 it performs really well. So it can be used in a huge variety of situations. It's pretty cool. So that's just easy to set, and look for videos about that from us in the future, and you can find them online today. So dual ISO, very cool. Back home, in the top right corner is actually a frame rate menu. It's a little confusing because that's not your base frame rate. Instead, that's a variable frame rate where you can adjust your high speed or slow motion or fast motion in the camera. You go there now, and in the top right corner you'll see that it says VFR is off. Hit that button again and it turns on. Now I can dial my frame rate. Right now on the 4K camera it's limited up to 60p in 4K. On the HS I can go all the way to 240 using their high-speed codec option. In January we'll get that high-speed option in here, going up to 120 frame rate wise. A really unique thing about this camera though in terms of off-speed recording is that the secondary recording, the sub-recording, can actually be recording at regular speed with synced audio while the main recording is recording in slow motion. So pretty cool. You don't see that ever. I mean, usually in slow motion, no audio, that's it, you're done. Here we get a regular recording at the same time, and that's going to be very handy for editorial purposes. And of course, having synced audio is always a nice thing. So that's there if you need it as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn that VFR off just like so, and I'm good to go. And you can, when you have VFR on, you can dial through the frame rates via the viewfinder and other places, so you don't have to be here to jump, just an option if you want it. Back home, now back down to these last two buttons in the middle. The bottom one's very important. It's where you set up your project settings of the camera. Top right, you have your frame rate, where you set the frequency, the delivery rate of the camera. Set to 23.98 right now, but you can step that all the way up to 25, 30, 29.7, that is, and up to 59.4p. So lots of base project rates that you expect, you know, PAL, NTSC frequencies, that is. Works like normal. Exit out of there. I set my resolution of my sensor. Now, the HS is just 1080p always, but on the 35, I can have it at 4K, 4096 by 2160, or Quad HD, which is 3840 by 2160 resolution. Hit that button, I can dial it in. Or I can have the main codec here, which is what I'm setting, scale down to 1080, the full image. So I can say, hey, scale it down to 1080 for me. I don't need to deliver 4K. Just set it up that way, and I'm done. Now, if I want to, on the sub-recording, I can also record at the same time. If I'm recording in 1080 or Quad HD, that's going to be an HD recording. If I'm recording in 4K, that's going to be a 2K recording, both scaled down from the 4K image. Set that up here on the sub-recording area right here, like that. And I can set my sub-recording up to just be a 2K 422 signal or a 2K 422 signal with the proxy. That's the third codec option you have in this camera. You have the full quad, full HD, or a 4K signal, HD or 2K signal, and then a really small proxy all at once. That's 3 codecs, pretty impressive, all at the same time. Different applications for each, you know, the email one, etc. And if you have the RAW, you can attach that here as well. That's the 4th codec. So lots of compressions if you want them right there, and you just set it up on the side. Yeah. On the same menu, you also have your audio interface. This is where you can set your audio levels. This far button here, you can adjust your audio input levels, switch your rear and front inputs to be different channels, set up AES and levels overall. It's kind of in the menu a little bit, but you can do it all on the side here, just as you would think. And again, if you have the interface for the camera on the far side, your audio guy can kind of be away from you and doing that as well. So it's all there. There's no physical dials for that. It's all through this little interface. Important to know. All right, so that's that main, that's the recording or project menu settings there. We have on top of that, right above it, the color menu. This is where we set lookup tables and the overall main color of the camera. If I hit that button, you're going to notice right away that it tells me that my main codec right here is set to be in V-Log or VariCam log. This is the most dynamic range version of the sensor, recording-wise, so it's a great thing to have if you want the best quality recording. But of course, you can also set that to 709, just record in regular HD if you want to. I can set that up, and then at the same time, on the sub recording here on the far side, have it record in a 709 LUT. So hit that button once or twice, and you'll see it says Vlog and then 709. Now the sub recording is set to 709. Pretty cool. In the middle here, I have a button called Grading. This grading option allows me to either dial in a CDL or load in a 3D LUT. Now, that's not totally available yet, but in January release, we'll be able to turn that on, load in a 3D LUT, or work with the camera remotely via a network interface. I didn't mention this before in the tour, but there is a network interface, an Ethernet port on the far side of the camera, as well as a little door back here to plug in a Wi-Fi dongle. Put those in, either one of them, and I can talk to the camera via software like Pomfort's Live Grade, and actually grade the camera live while I'm shooting. It's a pretty nice option to have, and it's really cool. So again, coming in January, look for a video on that. When you turn grading on, that's how you can adjust it. And then, big important one here, monitor set in the corner. Monitor set lets me choose what LUT goes to what. Maybe I want my viewfinder to be in 709, but monitor 1 to be in log, and monitor 2 to have 709, different purposes. I can set these each independently here, 709, log, etc. It's all possible. Again, if you're using the grading LUT, you can set that up there too. So all the LUTs are working sort of as expected. All right, going back home here now, the last thing to look at is the deeper menus of the camera. hit the menu button on the side here, and you'll see that big old list. Now, it's not nearly as deep as it was on older Panasonic cameras, but there's still lots of things in there. In the system settings menu, you have a lot, the top one there, you have a lot of the same things you expect to see everywhere else, but also a lot of duplicates. Things like my system settings, my recording frequency, my audio inputs, etc. But also this is where you would dial down to find the menu like monitor outputs that change the characters and the frame lines and monitor output, and also where you would go down to set up and record to format your media. So this is the cards media menu. I can format my cards here. They kind of buried in there on purpose so you don't accidentally do it, but it's in that system menu, right? So lots of stuff in there, but for the most part, accessible from the outside. Exit out of there. In the camera settings menu, this is actually a menu where I can actually dial in a look for the camera. This is enabled when you're recording in the 709 mode, sort of the regular color mode, not in log. When I'm in that mode, I can go in the camera and actually tweak things like the matrix and gamma and black gamma, basically all the settings that I always had in a VariCam before. So if you need that kind of stuff as a broadcast engineer, or just as anyone who likes to paint a camera for like what you see, what you get kind of shooting, you can do that too. And in the future, in a file menu, you'll be able to load in scene files, and of course we'll make our scene files as usual for the camera. So that's a great option. Going back in there, there is also a record settings menu here, which is where I can set my metadata and other things up for the camera, file names, etc. And then a viewfinder SDI option as well, right below that, where I can set up my viewfinder SDI port and some of the display stuff that's on my viewfinder, lines, frame lines, etc., different modes, focus enhancements, things like that. Again, that's all in that menu. And then last we have things like file, where we can in the future load in scene files and user files, things like that, and peripheral, which is the last one there, which can set up and interact with a GPS unit, so you can always know where you were when you were shooting. So tons of stuff in there. For the most part though, we don't need to go in there. We can do everything on the outside, which is great. Everyone loves that. It's just, you're just digging in for the sort of more in-depth, picky stuff, you know. So I like that about this camera. It's come a long way. Again, it's a real beast. It's strong, it's durable, it's well built. You got to come check it out because the images just look good too. So watch the footage on the internet, come in our office, check it out. We have one in New York, one in LA. You can come see it sitting there. It's worth checking out for sure. Just excited to have it here. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.